fight. Were pretty looking people, but I can tell you people, they were the devil's children.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Well, today we have some pretty incendiary ground to cover. There is the suspicion, and indeed the accusation, of great criminality, and all sorts of people are caught up in the action and the claims, including Harry, Hugh Grant, Elizabeth Hurley, Lawrence, Sadie Frost, etc., etc. But I will come to that in a minute, because I am leading today with the lead Stanya's question, which is, "Hi, Lady C, always so stunning." Oh, Aurora, take your paw and tap Matty's head back into shape. Thank you. It's nice, I have to tell you, to get compliments at the age of 73. I see Harry's court case has come out today to be based on fraudulent paperwork. That's right. The person concerned has tweeted that the signature was not his on Harry's documents and was commissioned by a person employed by Harry's teams, and because of this document, they, the other petitioners, thought something happened that didn't, especially the poor Baroness. I would love to hear your take on all this espionage. Well, Lee Stanya, it's not really espionage. It is chicanery. Gavin Burrows, the private investigator upon whose evidence, witness statement, the plaintiffs, the claimants have brought their case, has categorically denied ever signing it or ever giving it. He says categorically that the information was obtained and pieced together by what he calls ambitious paralegals from his evidence given many years ago as a part of the Leveson inquiry. He states categorically that the witness statement that is evidently 20 pages long and that has been attributed to him was cobbled together by his evidence when they were investigating the news of the world and the Sunday People. Nothing to do with associated newspapers. He further says that his doctor can prove that on the day the witness statement is purported to have been signed, that he was not in a fit condition to sign anything. So he has independent corroboration of his incapacity. Now, this is a massive fraud if it turns out that what he says is true, and I have no reason to doubt him. It is a massive fraud perpetrated upon the court, the judicial system, the British people, and most particularly associated newspapers. His narrative is that during the Leveson inquiry, he formed an association with somebody called Graham Johnson. And I'm going to quote what he says. I have not dealt with the paralegal conman convicted criminal Graham Johnson for over a year. Graham Johnson is convicted of a crime. It is a cut and paste from my evidence of News of the World and Sunday People, and the document was apparently electronically signed, hence why I contacted the male lawyers. They didn't contact him, he contacted them. Paralegals out to make money for non-existent claims. In fact, he means fabricated claims. Also, on the day of signing, my doctor can prove I was not in a state to sign it. Well, the whole thing begins many years ago when the two men formed a friendship and an association, so to speak. And they actually were writing a book together, and they did a television program together for the BBC, which, if I remember correctly, was called The Princes and the Press. They then fell out. It turns out that Graham Johnson is very much a close associate of Hugh Grant, who is one of the founders of Hacked Off, who by his own account has been determined to nail associated newspapers. Now, whether Graham Johnson fabricated this on his own or not is open to question. This is something that should be investigated, not only legally, but criminally. On the strength of Graham Johnson and Hugh Grant's interest in finishing off associated newspapers, according to Gavin Burrows, this statement of his was fabricated. In other words, it's a forgery. Uttering a forgery in a court of law to try to bring down a newspaper, and the plaintiffs, the claimants involved are Elton John, David Furnish, Prince Harry, Baroness Lawrence, who incidentally is a great friend of mine, and is a wonderful woman who sadly seems to have been roped into this via deception, if what Gavin Burrows says is to be believed. And I have no reservations at this point about believing everything he says. Carol Middleton, the Princess of Wales's mother, was also mentioned, but wisely has not got involved. Then, of course, there's the ex-girlfriend, Liz Hurley, who's Hugh Grant's ex-girlfriend, and there's also Sadie Frost. So it was all calculated to stun the court with these so important people. And look at how, and there's a wide span of them, and they have been taken advantage of by associated newspapers. When the whole thing, according to Gavin Burrows, whose witness statement forms the basis of the case, is a total fraud, lie, fabrication, and con job. I mean, you couldn't make this up. Well, Johnson introduced Burrows to a legal representative called Anjali Sangani. Now, she works with quite a well-known law firm called Gunnercook at 1 Cornhill in the City of London. I looked her up. She's nowhere to be found on their list at all. Her name doesn't exist. Has it been taken down in the last day or two? Or was it never up? Was she always a paralegal, as Gavin Burrows indicates she is? Is she collusive, or is she being conned? But she helped to create the witness statement. David Sherborne, the barrister, seems to have been instructed by Callum Galbraith of Hamlins as well as Anjali Sanjani of Gunnercook. David Sherborne is up to hair with Hugh Grant and Hacktoff and people of that ilk. Now, I am not accusing David Sherborne of anything except possibly having been duped. But this is a very serious matter. And the tentacles that have spread suggest a very thorough and a very exacting setup going back over a period of years. There is the BBC programme, The Princes and the Press. There is Meghan and Harry's Netflix programme, in which some of these claims feature. Do you see how the tentacles are spreading? Because they have Doreen Lawrence mentioned in it, because Doreen Lawrence's son Stephen was very tragically killed. And it was clearly a racial crime. And Netflix uses this to suggest that Meghan was a victim of racism by a congenitally racist nation called Britain. So on the one hand, you have a fabricated story that they have the unmitigated goal to actually act upon in a court of law. Then, on the other hand, you have all of these tentacles spreading everywhere else. And you have various claims being made in Netflix on behalf of Harry and Meghan about racism in Britain that is totally false and based upon yet more lies. And then, rather more chillingly, you have Meghan playing the race card because the month before she got married, she and Harry showed up at the 25th anniversary service for Stephen Lawrence, and she is playing the I'm a woman of colour, and therefore I need to link up with Doreen Lawrence, Baroness Lawrence, Lady Lawrence, because that's going to play well for me. And of course, Meghan being Meghan, she couldn't even respect the occasion enough to wear a dress with sleeves. It had to be a sleeveless dress. Well, anybody looking at this dispassionately can see that Doreen Lawrence has been used by Meghan and Harry, and she has clearly been used by the creators of this damnable plot. If what Gavin Burrows says is true, and I have no doubt it is. Now, I know Associated Newspapers very well. I have sued them repeatedly. I have a very close relationship with their legal department, the head of their legal department. The previous head of their legal department is a friend of mine. This goes back decades. And I can tell you that there is absolutely no way that Liz Hartley would be putting her signature or approval to anything fraudulent, which means that I believe absolutely everything that Associated Newspaper says. Now, what will be really interesting is to see whether Mr. Justice Nicklin grants Associated Newspapers application to strike out the claim. Or is he going to decide that it is, which he has indicated he might do, that it is a triable matter? Basically, you would then have the bizarre situation of a case where the claimant's chief witness says they're lying and the defendant's chief witness says he's speaking the truth. That will be very interesting to see. My own inclination would be that Mr. Justice Nicklin has sufficient evidence to say, I'm striking out this action because it's based upon what on the face of it appears to be a fraudulent claim. Of course, if he does that, he should then hand the matter over to the police. At which point you have to ask yourself, how vigilant are the police going to be about pursuing Mr. Johnson, Hugh Grant, Prince Harry? Now, I think some of the claimants have been seriously duped and are doubtless the innocent victims of what is clearly, in my view, going off what I know about Liz Hartley and Associated Newspapers and the law, and as well going off what Gavin Burrows has said. I think they are victims of one of the most flagrant attempts at fraud to have been practiced upon well, in public view of everybody upon a court. But we will see what happens. But make no mistake about this. This is far bigger and far more important and far more dangerous and far more flagrant than anything the mainstream media have yet suggested that it is. Yet again, their pusillanimity absolutely takes my breath away. Venus Rising says, Lady C, the US visa situation is gaining momentum. If it becomes a real issue, H&M could be in the soup. If H were denied re-entry into the US, M would have to decide if she would leave the US to join him. No way will M live in England. Would she join him in maybe a Commonwealth country? H would be responsible. He published the drugs info. M refusing to leave the US would put responsibility for the marriage on her. It neatly outsources the H&M perpetual mess for the US and UK. Their popularity has tanked. They are untrustworthy and annoying. After the coronation, no one will care. That would shuffle the chessboard, would love your thoughts. Well, my dear, I'm old enough and experienced enough to know that the Harrys of this world usually get away scot-free with breaches of the rules, regulations, and laws, unless it is something so flagrant, like he's caught with a gun in his hand, shooting someone on film, and the film is encrypted, and so he can't say it's a fake. Otherwise, sorry, I don't see anything happening to Harry. At least not as long as the present American government is in power. And even if the present American government is replaced with its alternative, I would be the most surprised person on earth if Harry is denied entry to the United States, even if, although he lied on his application form. I think the authorities will accept the Heroldian variation of the Meghan. Oh, I forgot. Mr. Justice Warby, I forgot. I really didn't remember that I told Jason Knopf to tell all those lies about my sister and father to Emmett Scabies and Caroline Durand. I really forgot. And the judge makes it quite clear that he knows she didn't forget that she was lying, but still gives her a free pass. Do I think Harry's going to get a free pass? Do you think this is April the 4th? Let's leave it at that. But it would be a very interesting scenario if Harry were banned from the United States of America, and they would not be able to live there. And would she? I think she would be quarter in, 3/4 out, as she hustled those buns and tried to find herself a better scenario. And when she couldn't, she'd be half in and half out. She'd still be in Hollywood, still trying to be a star. She's 40-something. She's still trying to be the star that she wanted to be. She's still hoping she's going to get an Oscar. Oh, Academy. I have to thank my mother, who was absent for many years, and all those rumors about her and why she was absent, we won't go into now. And I can't thank my father because I killed him. So I can't thank him. And it was one of the most joyous moments of my life when I realized I was free of that treacherous man who, can you believe it, actually was trying to rescue his reputation, which I had helped in my omissive way to damage, and maybe even in my commissive way had actually helped along with a little nudge or two as well. Jeff Rayner being a friend of mine, Jeff Rayner being the paparazzo who set the whole thing up. And I'm not making any admissions, and I don't think anybody else should try to accuse me of anything. And just because my father believes that I set him up doesn't mean I did. Everybody knows I'm pure and innocent as the freshly driven snow. Well, after it's turned to sludge maybe, but still. So, if she can replace him, she will. And if she can't, and they live in Botswana? Can you just see Megsy baby depriving herself of all those photo ops to go to all those fabulous events that she goes to? Remember, she was nominated for an Oscar, and she was also nominated to give out the Oscar for the best movie. And remember, she also was at President Obama's birthday party, and she got that award from Kerry Kennedy for fighting the institutional racism of the racist British royal family that Harry then said they'd never accused of being racist, but they still accepted the award. And let's see what else we can come up with that Megsy baby is innocent of. Well, I think you get the drift. Oh, and incidentally, they've managed to muscle in on yet another award. She's getting the Gracie Award. Now, I didn't know Gracie Allen, but I did meet George Burns, her widower, in September 1967. I met him through Gertrude Brooks, who was Nancy Ames's press agent, as well as a great friend of Frances McCall, who was my guardian when I was at school in New York. And we went to a taping of a show with Nancy Ames and George Burns, and I met him there. Charming man. He was very ancient, but so dapper. I mean, absolutely immaculate. Everything, the tailoring of the suit, the hair, the cut of it, just so dapper. Well, he and Gracie Fields must be spinning like gigs in their grave to think that Meghan Markle would have been given an award linked to Gracie Allen. Sorry, did I say Gracie Fields? I meant Gracie Allen. So anyway, and I think we can safely move on to what N. Toft says. Lady Colin, please could you tell at the forthcoming coronation of King Charles on May 6th, will foreign heads of state be present? there has been some comment that President Joe Biden will not be attending. However, no American president has ever attended a coronation before. Many exclamation marks. Indeed, at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, there were no foreign heads of state at all present. So is this tradition now being broken? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. King Charles III is radicalizing the coronation. Now, I cannot compromise people who have been expressing opinions. Let's be neutral about it, to me. Because there are only a handful of people who could be expressing opinions as to what is going on. So I need to be very careful what I say. I think the less I say, the better. All I can say is I hope that the coronation turns out to have a smattering of the splendor and the grandeur and the magnificence of a coronation, and that would make it watchable for people all over the world, instead of being a poor, pared-down version of a very sad sack, not even high church, but low church service with some decent music, because the king knows about music. Why are all of these foreign heads of state being asked? Because he's asked practically every foreign head of state that we are on cordial terms with, and a few that aren't. For instance, why is Ursula von der Leyen being asked? I mean, this is the coronation of our king. It's about us, the British people. It's not about the European Union. It's not about networking. It's not the latest version of Harry and Meghan's wedding service with Ursula von der Leyen playing the part of Oprah Winfrey. Let us see what happens. Let us see if it turns out to have any of the splendor, because what I have been told leads me to believe that it is going to be possibly moving if you are of a particular persuasion. It's going to be representative of all sorts of orders in society generally. LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ, NONSENSE, STUPIDITY, EVERYBODY, WHOSHOUDNTB there, etc., etc. That's how people say it is shaping up. Hopefully, they are over-editing the pudding and exaggerating. The harbingers, I hate to say, are not very good. Well, let's just wait and see what happens. Because if Charles and William, who I gather has quite a bit of input into this, don't understand that you look to reward your supporters before you decide to cultivate those who have no interest in your perpetuation. This coronation might turn out to be unique. More than that, I think I don't want to say, because it is the king's coronation, and if he wishes to put his desires before tradition and wishes to show us how relevant he is, I will issue one word of warning. Look to the example of your son and daughter-in-law across the water to see what cultivation of relevance versus common sense and respect for tradition. Look and see where they get them and where they get you. But I think it's all too late now. The die is cast. The invitations have gone out, and a lot of invitations that would have been expected to have been received have not been, because they're making space, not for the traditional aspects, but for change. We're all in favor of change. We're modern. Well, at least it will be an interesting show, even if it doesn't turn out to be what supporters of the monarchy would have regarded as desirable. But we'll see. Hopefully, this is all very misguided, and it's all going to be wonderful, and Charles will touch all the bases, and everyone will be, at least if not happy, each group will have been thrown a crust, or maybe even just a crumb, but enough to keep everybody sort of happy. But we'll see. Lake Girl says, "Dear Lady C, greetings from a mere mortal in New York who is looking forward to the coronation." Love it. Hi, mere mortal, from another mere mortal. There is a headline here saying that pairs invited to the coronation are to dress down. Robes acceptable but no coronets. Seems half-dressed. Are you able to share some of what you know about the coronation? We are also looking forward to seeing the Prince and Princess of Wales and their lovely children. And I'm going to read the next comment because this also figures in the answer. LRR says, "Hello, Lady C. I just heard that Catherine may break royal tradition and not wear a tiara to the coronation. Could this be true? I was even hoping Charlotte would wear the golden coronet Queen Elizabeth wore at her father's coronation. Change is good, but I think some traditions should be kept. Also about the coronation ivory pieces. Since the pieces already exist, why ban the use of them? I understand the killing of elephants for their tusks. Please help explain." Well, I'm going to take those two questions as one. And I'm going to start with the elephants and the ivory. Several years ago, Prince William actually said that he thought that all the ivory in the royal collection should be destroyed. Well, what an act of Philistinism that would be. One hopes that out of the mouth of youngsters came stupidity, because it certainly wasn't out of the mouth of babes, wisdom coming forth. Obviously, why should all those elephants have been sacrificed for absolutely nothing? Which is exactly what would happen. One of the babies is snoring, in case you haven't heard. Which is exactly what would happen if everything were destroyed or not put on display. We now know that elephants should not be killed for their tusks, that ivory is something that should be left where it is in the present as a feature of the past. All this pandering stupidly to fashion. Charles and William have to decide whether they are stylists or fashionistas. Now, I happen to believe in being a stylist. You go for style. You don't go for fashion. Fashion blows you to the left, blows you to the right. You're trapped with unsuitable things. If you, on the other hand, choose to go with style, you create something that fits you and that hopefully improves with time. So I certainly think that the ivory should be used. As for Catherine not wearing a tiara, before we get to that, pairs are invited to dress down, robes acceptable but no coronets. Well, I don't want to comment on what I have heard about the representatives of the Houses of Lords and Commons, because the information I have been given is too precise for me to comment upon at this stage, because it would give the game away. And while I don't mind giving their game away, I do mind giving my sources away. So, as for Catherine not wearing a tiara, why don't they just put her in a bikini and maybe plait her hair into pigtails? A coronation is not an international thing. It is a sacred anointing of a monarch by his people, on behalf of his people. It's nothing to do with wretched Ursula von der Leyen or the President of Poland. Nothing. Traditionally, heads of state were never asked to coronations. They never attended coronations. Mr. Toft is absolutely right. Biden should not attend. No president should be attending. Each nation should have a representative attending. And if they are a monarch, they should have a representative attending. They should not themselves attend. That is the old tradition. Well, we live in an age of change. We gotta change everything. Right? Why? Just because it ain't broke? And why would you say it ain't broke, don't fix it? It ain't broke, fix it. In fact, it ain't broke, smash it and come up with something new. And if it turns out to be worse, well, we've at least tried something new. I mean, the mockery that people make. A monarchy is supposed to be a link between the past and the future via the present. No coronets, no tiaras. Well, let's wait and see what happens. More than that, I don't want to say. I can tell you there are an awful lot of people whose noses are already out of joint. But I think we should wait and see what the outcome is. Maybe Charles will pull a few rabbits out of his hat and come up with an occasion that is splendid and contemporary. Maybe we'll have Harry wearing his baseball cap back to front. And maybe Meghan can roller skate in. Let's see. Bison Babe says, there has been discussion about Harry's mental health, but what about Meghan's? She lives in Fantasyland where she reinvents the staging and scenes daily. She exhibits paranoia, self-grandiose behavior, hypocrisy, anxiety, fear, and she lies. She's not got a full deck either. Can it be said her condition is more than character flaws? What do you think, Lady C? Well, there is a very interesting article that was published in the American press where the Vanity Fair writer Vanessa Grigoriadis said that Meghan has a strange relationship to objective truth. Of course, she's saying what I've said for years. You can't treat the Meghans of this world. She knows there's nothing wrong with her. There's a lot wrong with everybody else. And it's her sacred mission to let us know it. As for Harry, you can see how his mental health has degenerated under her influence. He's gone from the cheeky chappy who actually seemed to like people and his family and seemed to want to be a constructive member of society and was the second most popular member of the royal family and the most popular male of the royal family, to the least popular male of the royal family, and universally reviled. So, Meghan doesn't need flattery either. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all? When I'm not rounding up. And who's the fairest of us all in every other way? Who's the brightest? Me, me, me. Who's the most wonderful? Me, me, me. Who's the most compassionate? Me, me, me. One act of cruelty at a time. Me, me, me. But at least it's getting out there for the general public and now the American popular media that Meghan ain't all she's cooked up to be either. IP2022 says, Lady C, 2 questions if I may. The American author James Pattterson has accused the New York Times of cooking the books after his latest work failed to appear in its renowned list. What do you, as a fellow New York Times best-selling author, make of that? And 2, Stephen Smith, I'll do them separately. They're 2 completely different questions. So, well, what can I say? I think James Pattterson has proven that the New York Times cooks the books and cooks up the list. You know, he wrote an open letter after his new book, Walk the Blue Line, failed to make the cut to the top 15 titles. Then he pointed out that the book had outsold all but 3 of those on the bestsellers list, according to independent data. And he questioned the way the paper compiled its figures. He actually accused it of a lack of statistical rigor. In other words, they're liars, because it did not rely on raw sales. In other words, actual sales. Well, he also claimed that a book by Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State and CIA director, called Never Give an Inch, had failed to appear on the list, despite selling more copies than 6 other titles on the list. What can I say? The New York Times has become a shadow of itself. In fact, it has become a mockery of what acceptable journalism is. And for it to now be cooking the books, literally, so that authors it doesn't want to appear on its list will not, is reprehensible. It's dishonest. It shows that the New York Times is now a disgrace. And the second question is, Stephen Smith, the new Australian High Commissioner, has stated it is inevitable, in quotes, that Australia will become a republic and remove King Charles as head of state. The country's new High Commissioner has warned. Your thoughts would be welcome on both. Well, I've given my thoughts on James Pattterson, and I'll give my thoughts on Stephen Smith. First of all, I think it's extremely bad manners for a new High Commissioner to be making comments like that a month before the King's coronation. High Commissioners are supposed to be diplomats. I think Mr. Smith could look up the word diplomacy in the dictionary. He might also wish to look up the word self-restraint. Tasteless is another word he can look up. And while he's at it, go down to tea for tacky. You know, according to Stephen Smith, the move would not damage the UK's relationship with Australia. And he thinks that most Brits would be indifferent to the decision. All of this was stated in his first interview since taking up his post. He's an avowed Republican, and he told the Times that Australians were still absolutely proud to have Charles as their head of state. The monarchy's popularity has taken a hit in Australia following the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the repeated attacks from Harry and Meghan, which have done little to improve the monarchy's reputation. Then Smith said, there is a lot of affection and respect for the monarchy in Australia. That affection and respect hasn't gone away because of Australia contemplating from time to time what it should do about its constitutional arrangements. My personal view is it's inevitable, but how that's progressed is entirely a matter for the Australian government of the day. Well, the Australians recently had a referendum and they roundly rejected republicanism. Mr. Smith and the party he represents and the government he represents are pro-Republican. I have covered this before because being Jamaican, I understand the other side of the coin. And the reality is, whether Jamaica and Australia remain monarchies or become republics, it's ultimately going to make a very little difference to the relationships between the countries and the states with Britain and the British monarchy. So, I do think, though, it was indecorous, indelicate, and undiplomatic of him. And finally, Golden Autumn says, important please, Lady C, I wonder if you can convey to Meghan Markle that if she needs thousands, very likely more will respond. Signed, statutory declarations about how her reputation was maligned all over the world. This being what we heard and experienced, I feel sure it could be arranged by setting up an online petition to confirm this. I, for one, am more than willing to support her, and I know there will be many, many others. This is in light of the judge concerned advising that global defamation wasn't able to be proven. But we out here all know what was said and how it portrayed Samantha. Just a suggestion. Hope it's a practical and obtainable one. Golden Autumn, I love you. It's wonderful. I think it's marvelous. I am reading this out because I would like anybody who agrees and thinks that this is something worth doing, that they respond in kind and say so, and I will hand over the comments to Samantha's legal advisors via Samantha. And I can set up something that would be acceptable to the court. I think it's a brilliant idea, and thanks for suggesting it. Judy Williamson says, poor Samantha, I know her MS she has got to keep her exhausted most of the time. Very difficult for her. You're absolutely right. She struggles in a way that she doesn't make public. She doesn't want sympathy. Like all genuinely disabled people, she does her best and tries to be as independent as possible and doesn't ask for sympathy. What a flip side to the coin of her half-sister. I was wondering if they will also be bringing up the statements from Netflix. It seems that would also help her case, but I was never sure if this was included in the initial documents. Anyone know for sure? Yes, these will be brought up in the amendments. And Lucy Lockett says, I'm amazed it wasn't brought to Judge Honeywell's attention that Meghan instructed Jason Knopf to relay the information, and Harry texted to remind him that he and Meghan mustn't be seen to be involved. Both are key parts of the evidence, but I'm so glad Samantha's got good lawyers now. Yes, those were fundamental issues that needed to be spelt out very clearly, and clearly in the initial pleadings were not. Hopefully, that can be addressed in the appeal process, because that part of the case needs to be appealed. Liliana Webster says, Samantha is already a winner. The world can see clearly that Samantha is a decent human being, despite has-been's mattress wife causing her so much pain. Anyone who treats their sister who is in a wheelchair the way she did is the loser in the public eye. Nasty, vicious excuse for a woman. One nasty deed at a time. Well, when you are vain, and when you are entitled, and when you are arrogant, and when you look down on others, others who might be your equals and might even be your superiors, because we all have equals and we all have superiors. But Meghan regards herself as superior to everybody. The disdain that is written across her face 9 times out of 10, and is then conveyed in her actions. The disdain indicates a degree of haughtiness and cruelty and coldness that is truly chilling. And I agree with you. No matter what happens in that lawsuit, Samantha has exposed Meghan for being the rather distasteful creature that she is. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and the comments coming in, because as I keep on saying, this cannot be done without you. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless. And if you have really enjoyed it, could you please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care of yourself. God bless. Bye-bye.